Now in the 6th month, the angel Gabriel was sent by God to a city of Galilee named Nazareth, to a virgin betrothed to a man whose name was Joseph of the house of David. The virgin's name was Mary. And having come in, the angel said to her, "Rejoice, highly favored one. The Lord is with you. Blessed are you among the women."
But when she saw him, she was troubled at his saying, and considered what manner to greeting this was. When the angel said to her, "Do not be afraid, Mary, for you have found favor with God, and behold, you will conceive in your womb, and bringing forth a son, and shall call his name Jesus. He will be great and will be called the Son of the Highest, and the Lord God will give him the throne of his father David, and he will reign over the house of Jacob forever, and of his kingdom there will be no end." Then Mary said to the angel, "How can this be, since I do not know a man?"
And the angel answered and said to her, "The Holy Spirit will come upon you, and the power of the Highest will overshadow you. Therefore also the Holy One who is to be born will be called the Son of God. Now indeed, Elizabeth, your relative, has also conceived a son in her old age, and this is now the 6th month for her who was called barren. For with God nothing will be impossible." Then Mary said, "Behold, the maidservant of the Lord. Let it be to me according to your word." And the angel departed from her.
Well, we know this part of the story as well as just about anything in the Bible, don't we? Mary, unwed but engaged, receives some initially kind of problematic news, quite likely disastrous news, actually. She's pregnant. And good old Gabriel, what's the very first thing he says to her about it all? Well, I find the New King James translation to be the one that stops me in my tracks. The angel opens with, "Rejoice." Rejoice. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was an angel, which to be clear, I'm far from an angel, but if I was an angel and God said to me, "Peter," or would my name now be Gabriel? Peter Gabriel? I digress. If I was an angel and God turned to me and said, "Hey, you there, angel over there, I've got this assignment for you," and this was the assignment, I think I'd be a lot more likely to start out with the words, "Okay, now hear me out first." What I definitely wouldn't lead with would be rejoice. Rejoice? Be filled with joy? I'm impressed enough that Mary agrees to just go along with this thing, to just let this be. But to rejoice? In the midst of what, for all she knows, will be a disaster for her engagement, at a time when a disastrous engagement for a woman could leave her so vulnerable that it would likely lead to a disastrous life. Gabriel over here leads with rejoice. The opening to Luke's Christmas story forces the immediate question, is there really joy to be found in disaster? Have people actually found joy in disaster? Can we find joy in this disaster that is 2020? This morning, let's take a look. It's San Francisco, 1906, early in the morning, and Rebecca Solnit tells it like this. At 5:12 in the morning, about a minute of seismic shaking tore up San Francisco, toppling buildings, cracking and shifting others, collapsing chimneys, breaking water mains, gas lines, twisting streetcar tracks. It was a major earthquake, centered right off the coast of the peninsular city, and the damage it did was considerable. But afterward came the fires, both those caused by broken gas mains and chimneys, and those caused and augmented by the misguided police trying to blast fire breaks ahead of the flames, and actually just preventing citizens from firefighting in their own homes and neighborhoods. nearly 5 square miles. More than 28,000 structures were incinerated in one of history's biggest urban infernos before aerial warfare. Nearly every municipal building was destroyed. So were many downtown businesses, mansions, slums, middle-class neighborhoods, dense residential commercial district of Chinatown. The outlines of this disaster are familiar, Solnit writes. But the response of the citizens is less familiar. Here's one. Mrs. Anna Hullhauser, whom a local newspaper described as a woman of middle age, woke up on the floor of her bedroom on Sacramento Street where the earthquake had thrown her. She took time to dress herself while the ground in her home were still shaking. In that era when getting dressed was no simple matter of simply throwing on clothes. Powder, paint, jewelry, hair switch, all were on when I started my flight down 120 stairs to the street, she recalled. The house in Western San Francisco was slightly damaged. Her downtown place of business, she was a beautician and a masseuse, was a total wreck. So she salvaged what she could and moved on with a friend, Mr. Paulson. They camped out in Union Square downtown until the fires came close and soldiers drove them onward. Like thousands of others, they ended up trudging with their bundles to Golden Gate Park, the 1,000-acre park that runs all the way to the Pacific Ocean. There, they spread an old quilt and lay down, not to sleep, but to shiver with cold from fog and mist, and watch the flames of the burning city, whose blaze shone far above the trees. On the third day in the park, she stitched together blankets, carpets, and sheets to make a tent that sheltered 22 people, including 13 children. And Hullhauser started a tiny soup kitchen with one tin can to drink from and one pie plate to eat from. All over the city, stoves were being hauled out of damaged buildings. Fire was forbidden indoors since many standing homes had gas leaks. And so people cooked for each other, for strangers, for anyone in need. Hullhauser's generosity was typical, even if her initiative was exceptional. Hullhauser got funds to buy eating utensils across the bay in Oakland. The kitchen began to grow. And soon she was feeding 2,000 to 3,300 people a day. Not a victim of the disaster, but a victor over it, and the hostess of a popular social center, her brother and sister's keeper. Some visitors from Oakland liked her makeshift dining camp so well they put up a sign, Palace Hotel, naming it after the burned out downtown luxury establishment that was reputedly once the largest in the world. In fact, humorous signs became common around the camps and street side shelters. Nearby on Oak Street, a few women ran what had been christened the Oyster Loaf and the Chat Noir, or actually two little shacks with names, though, in fancy cursive on them. A shack in Jefferson Square was titled The House of Mirth, with additional signs jokingly offering rooms for rent with steam heat and elevators. The inscription on the side of the place christened Hoffman's Cafe, another tiny shack, included the items flea's eyes raw 98 cents, pickled eels nails fried 13 cents, fly's legs on toasts 0.09 cents, ending with rainwater fritters with umbrella sauce $9.10. The Appetite Killery, maybe the most ironic name, but the most famous inscription on all these shacks and tents read, "Eat, drink, and be merry, for tomorrow we may have to go to Oakland." Inexplicably, this whole thing, this spontaneous community, these experiences of sudden equality, these blessedly funny signs, calling a shack the House of Mirth, it all reeks of something more than just disaster, doesn't it? Something that, dare we say it, smells a little like joy? You know, when Solnit writes about these signs, I can't help but think back to the opening of Luke's Christmas story, with the angel opening up Mary's hard news with the declaration, "Rejoice." Is the power at work in this angel the same power at work in the one who saw Anna Amelia Hullhauser's scrap-together tent in that scrap-together camp, recognized it for what it truly was, and declared it to be the Palace Hotel? Gabriel's opening line to Mary and Solnit's description of the citizens of San Francisco's response to disaster make me curious about this deeper experience that can accompany terrible difficulty. Make me curious about the surprising possibility that joy might not just be scattered here and there in a disastrous time, but somehow actually germinate in a special way there too. As I reflected on this, and as I wondered about where that might be happening in this disaster that is 2020, I thought about another woman I saw taking exceptional initiative in the face of disaster this year. I thought about my mom. I thought about those pictures and meditations she's been posting online that I recently mentioned in a sermon. They run the gambit of emotions that we've all experienced this year, but today I've invited her to simply show us some of those pictures that brought her joy, and to read to us some of those short meditations she wrote about them, and to reflect on what it has meant for her to find joy in 2020 as she has tried to be mindful of the details of her everyday experience of it. If you're like me, I suspect you may at first find yourself surprised by all that she has found joy in this year, but I suspect that before long, you might also find yourself nodding along, recognizing that indeed, some of this resonates with some of what you have found or can find in the midst of this disastrous year too. So, Mom, are you out there? Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready. Can you hear me?
We can. I'm gonna start sharing your picture. Well, no, I'll wait till you're ready. I'll start sharing the pictures when the time is right. Go ahead.
Okay, so early this year, the COVID-19 pandemic worsened, and I began to feel quite sorry for myself, realizing that I was basically confined to my house and my yard. As my emotions roller coasted between extremes, I felt the need to focus. And as I thought about what my options were, I realized that I might reframe my mindset to treat my limited space as if it were a travel destination. So I got out my camera and began to search for images that spoke to my emotions and to share my photos and thoughts on Facebook. It's been a really rewarding endeavor, and at times it's helped me to give voice to my loss of hope, my emptiness, and my longings. And at other times, it's redirected me to gratitude, hope, and even joy. Giving voice to my emotions through photos and writing has ultimately graced me with a daily search for meaning in these trying times. Through this exercise, I've experienced a greater reverence for nature and a gratitude for the many rich aspects of my life in this limited space that I find myself in. I have a book called Listening to Nature by Joseph Cornell, and in his introduction, he says, "It isn't where we are that's important. Rather, it's how deeply we are able to see and experience, no matter where we are." I'm not sure if you can identify with me when you live in Oregon. It seems that there you don't have to look very far to be inspired by your natural surroundings. The mountains, the ocean, the waterfalls, the rich flora and fauna. In Manitoba, it's more of a challenge. Kathleen Norris is a poet who moved from New York City to a small town in western South Dakota. And in her book, Dakota, she rises to the challenge of finding subtle beauty in what she calls the stark land that nobody wants. As I've already said, this project emoted a wide range of emotions for me, but today's theme is joy. So I want to share with you a few of the photos that brought me joy. Have you got it up there, Peter?
I will in a second here. Here we go.
This is on April 8th. This photo inspired me to write. "The limits of my space are the length and width of my yard, but I look up and realize that no limit has been placed on the space above my head. There is pure freedom in that endless sky up there. So I give myself permission to throw off the heavy winter coat and boots that I had hoped would protect my heart, the fear and anxiety that are so contagious. I celebrate the joy of this moment, the pure blue sky above my head, the newly arrived robin hopping in the grass, the distant honking of returning geese, the warming rays of sun, the dancing art of light and shadow. And neither have limits been placed on generosity, compassion, and love. Less than a week later, I took a photo which swept me into joy with the following words. Inexplicably, I felt a scrap of joy as I looked at this picture. Maybe it was the very green blades of grass or the sparkly reflection of the sun on the snow. Anyway, I find myself almost feeling guilty when joy sneaks in the back door of my heart these days. I might be going crazy. All right, towards the end of April, one of my photos brought to mind a more tempered expression of joy. This is what I wrote. I was struck by the subtle gray shades in this photo. I've usually seen gray as a boring color, lacking brightness and vibrancy, yet the gentle beauty here attracted my attention. Perhaps as my life no longer includes the easy joys of potlucks and book club gatherings, of traveling freely and spending time with family, I'm being called to see more subtle forms of beauty. In Manitoba, spring comes slowly, and as I wander my yard, I'm still searching for spring bursting out. I know it will come, but in the meantime, I am learning to reframe my lust for easy joy and find meaning in more gentle images. In the words of Saint Hilary, a 4th century bishop, everything that seems empty is full of the angels of God. In June, joy was easier to find around me. In response to this photo, I wrote, I remember not long ago searching my space for glimpses of beauty, and suddenly it is all too much. Bright yellow irises, pure white anemones, grapevines reaching out, chive blossoms among the sorrel plants. The variety that has burst out with joyful exuberance seems almost wasteful, too much for one day. Wishing I could have a day like this just once during our bitter winter. On the other hand, right now, I wish for a window in time to enjoy political harmony that brings equity and freedom to travel to see my children and grandchildren in Oregon, all just so out of reach. So I will choose to revel in the beauty around me, at the same time praying for peace, justice, and pandemic solutions. And the summer brought garden goodness. And as I used garden produce, preparing foods that my mother taught me brought joy to my heart. This photo inspired the following words. My garden gives me the chance to prepare so many foods my mom taught me. Right now, cucumbers and dill are abundant. And I've been making this simple salad that has been passed down probably through the generations. I feel a certain inner connection with the women who have gone before me when I follow the rhythms of garden harvest to prepare these dishes. I sense my mom's presence as I follow these traditions. Food preparation was a demonstration of her generosity and hospitality. I'm reminded to follow her example, to bring a sense of joy and well-being to my small corner of the world. As I do so, I find inner calm replacing the fear that plagues my heart with news of global pandemics and political unrest. With Advent starting last week, it seemed challenging to find joy in what seemed like empty prospects. This photo shows how I found unexpected joy as expressed in the following words. I was not in the mood to decorate the Christmas tree this year. It just seemed too painful to carry on a practice that traditionally involved family joy. But Dell hauled up the tree and initiated the addition of lights. And last night I decided maybe I could do it. The gentle strains of anonymous 4 Christmas CDs drifted through the living room. And as we proceeded, my heart opened up to gratitude as decorations flooded my soul with memories. The aluminum foil bell that Peter made in kindergarten, the wooden ornaments that Katrina painted before she could stay in the lines, the beauties cross-stitched by my mom with love, the gorgeous wood designs Dell had been creating, the elf, which Peter each year arranges in some compromising position with the angel on the top. We call her the Spitzpoop. Even some ornaments that bring back memories of heartache, disillusionment, and tension. All are strands of a tapestry that is our beautiful, imperfect life, definitely not color coordinated and orderly, but full of love. And in those moments of gratitude, a deep sense of joy and peace filled me in spite of everything. So now I am challenged to discover further joy as I anticipate a Christmas without family and friends with whom to celebrate in person. As I read the Christmas story, my challenges to find joy are small compared to the challenges faced by the Holy Family. Yet God brought them joy in the unexpected form of angels, shepherds, and wise men. I trust God can continue to bring me unexpected joy as well.
Thanks, Mom.
Thank you.